when the new Chinese president told us in Port of Spain recently that China was going to invest $3 billion US dollars in the Caribbean, 1.5 billion for infrastructural development and 1.5 billion for concessional lending. We welcome all the help we can get. And I think that China has realized, it's gone into Africa as well. I think China has realized that it has to reach out to the world. The world can only be a comfortable place for China.
Every area of the globe is going to be affected in that way. Relatively small scale interests, as far as China is concerned, can have huge impact for us here in the Caribbean. And I think each country is trying to take advantage of its own prospects and possibilities.
Is there a brewing Chinese hegemony in the Caribbean? And if there is, are the Chinese's efforts neo-colonialistic?
Throughout the Caribbean's history, colonials had control of the factors of production and had control of the natural resources of the countries in the Caribbean. The Chinese, in the very same way, capitalizes on the natural and strategic resources of the Caribbean.
With the creation of road networks, investment in ports, and concessionary lending, the Chinese leverages its economic influence in allowing for the improvement in the trade of its goods within the region.
Excuse me, where are you? Oh. China? Yeah, all the land. The funds, I'm sure Jamaica. No. Everything from China? Alright, thanks.
Likened to the Europeans during the colonial era, the Chinese seeks to improve their trade efficiency through and within the Caribbean countries with the influx of Chinese retail stores in the country and Chinese shopping sites available to all inside the region and the world at large. Similar to the transatlantic slave trade route created by the Europeans to move the Caribbean's raw materials, the Chinese have implemented actions to work on the Panama Canal to ensure ease of trade for their goods.
Apart from trade, the Chinese are also keen in granting contracts to their nationals, resulting in an improvement in the employment of their locals.
Projects such as the Bahama Resort in Bahamas and the North-South Highway in Jamaica have reported a large figure of Chinese workers. Guyana's labor laws were violated by the Chinese because what locals were being employed were underpaid. The leveraging of employment opportunities for their nationals and the unfair treatment of locals is the trend that can be seen. And while there is documentation that China has contributed to approximately 1.8 million jobs in the Caribbean and Latin America, what quantity of those jobs is local labor is unknown.
Hello, my name is Lorenzo. I was employed to China Harbor Engineering Company's North-South Highway project as a health, safety, and environmental engineer. Now, to be in a position like this at a company like China Harbor is career suicide, or should I say, it was more like trying to move an immovable boulder. In that, the Chinese, they have a different concept of maintaining health and safety and environmental protocols and standards. So trying to enforce hours with them was very difficult. One, they do not have the same value or hold the same value on life. So things like personal protective equipment, simple things like helmets and harnesses for people who were working on the hillsides were not easily attainable because they didn't feel like they needed it. Also, the environment was pretty harsh because it was outdoorsy, so you were exposed to the elements like the sun, vulva heat, rain, fog in the mornings or in the evenings. And fact is, because it was a construction site, there was a lot of dust. And the measures that were put in place to mitigate or to minimize these conditions for the workers were not really put in place by the Chinese, because they didn't believe that it was necessary. They thought that they could just do what they needed to do to get the highway done and go about their business. So, needless to say, some of these working conditions for the workers, and especially the Jamaican workers, was very, very harsh and unnecessarily harsh. So, it was really rough. It was grueling. I know I was definitely underpaid, and the people who were in similar capacities were also underpaid. So, yeah, I think much more could have been done to compensate where wages were concerned, and especially where certain incidents where injuries occurred. It was difficult to get compensation for the injuries from the company.
Labor in the era of colonialism can be described as the brutal treatment of African slaves who were subjected to work in the poorest of conditions. The treatment of persons employed by the Chinese today can almost be described as working under those same conditions. Just as how in the post-colonial time, the Chinese crowded out the business activity of the Caribbean, so today are they also crowding out local labor with Chinese workers for investment projects.
Good afternoon, Governor. Could you please tell us who our major contributors to our infrastructure development has been?
Well, as you can see, Jamaica is a very small country and we have to highly depend on larger countries to contribute to our economy in terms of building roads, building facilities, and so far China has been our main contributor to these infrastructures.
Thank you.
As it relates to investment in the region, the false pretense of the advancement of the Caribbean in terms of infrastructure and roadways was used by Europe to ultimately entrap us as a colony. Today, are the developments by the Chinese another form of entrapment? Will the Caribbean be subjected to a continued dependency due to the major obligations associated with Chinese investment?